I'll see you in a little bit.
Liquidation. Okay,
yeah.
Thanks, Gary. Senator Schumer speaking on the Senate floor on Tuesday, saying that some Republicans are looking to separate from the Norquist tax pledge. Take a listen.
Republicans in both the House and Senate are deciding they no longer want to be married to this pledge. Republicans are saying they want a divorce from Grover Norquist.
Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky has spoken out in favor of the pledge this week, says he does not support raising taxes to avert the fiscal cliff. Senator Rand Paul joins us this morning from Capitol Hill. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning. I'd like to know, when did Chuck Schumer start attending the Republican caucus meetings? Who let him in?
He seems to have some unique insight into what the GOP is thinking. What do you think is going through his mind? I mean, I'm sure he could point to a Chambliss or a Graham, could he not?
Well, I don't think Chuck Schumer now speaks for the Republican Party, so he should probably stick with his own party as far as being a spokesman. What I would say is it's always been the Republican philosophy that we believe the best way to stimulate the economy is to leave more money in the private sector. I think most of the money that is sent to Washington is wasted and counterproductive. It goes into regulations and spending that is not wanted by any consumer. So we want to leave more money in the marketplace. It's always been our philosophy. And I think the few who appear to be backpedaling, if you listen closely, I don't think they're jumping up and down to raise taxes. And we'll see in the end how they vote.
You said recently about the pledge, I'm a huge fan of the pledge, and I think it does hold people's feet to the fire, and they've essentially signed their signature and said they're not going to raise taxes. So if they go back on their word, they'll suffer the repercussions in the next election. But you've also said the party at large has an issue in danger of becoming a dinosaur, in your words. How do you demonstrate compromise if every day you're beholden to something that you signed years and years ago?
Well, I'm not beholden to a pledge. I am in favor of a philosophy, and I was elected on a philosophy: smaller governments, less debt, balanced budgets, and a belief in the private marketplace and leaving more money in it. But it isn't that I'm beholden necessarily to a pledge. But as far as compromise, there does need to be some compromise. We need to reduce spending across the board, and that means Republicans like myself who believe in a strong national defense have to admit that not every dollar spent on the military is wisely spent or frugally spent, and we'll have to compromise there. The liberals will have to admit the same for domestic spending, for entitlement, and for welfare. And if both sides compromise, then we can reduce spending. Spending is at 25% of GDP now, and just 4 years ago it was at 20% of GDP. This is a spending problem. The only way in which it's a revenue problem is that we're in the midst of a recession, and because of the recession, revenue is down. But if you raise tax rates, it's not a given that you'll get more revenue. You may well get less revenue with higher rates, and you may well hurt the economy further, which makes revenue even worse.
Yeah. On a framework itself, you've been asked recently if you think we'll get one. You said we would get one, but it would be big, bad, and ugly. What do you mean by that?
At the end of the year, a lot of people want to go home, so they stuff a lot of things that have to be done into one big, bad, ugly bill, and it gets passed. That's the history of Washington, and I see no reason to think that it won't happen again. But what I'm afraid of is that a lot of stuff will get put in there. For example, we just raised the debt ceiling $2 trillion a year ago, over $2 trillion, and we're going to do it again. People up here are not to be trusted with money. They are not good with money. There's no secret of that. Do not send your money to Washington. It's the last place you want to send your money. We are not acting responsibly. We passed statutory caps, the Budgetary Control Act, the sequester. They all came from last year when we said we were going to reform our ways and be better stewards of the money, and we're already going back on our word. So don't send any more money up here. If anything, send more rules. The rules should be you have to balance your budget every year like every American family.
Senator Tom Cole of Oklahoma says let's at least try to get the middle class out of the burning living room when it comes to tax increases come year end. Are you in favor of doing something that is at least operative in the very near term on that front?
Here's the logical problem with this. Everybody seems to agree, Republican or Democrat, if we raise everyone's taxes, it will be bad for the economy and hurt economic growth. So if we raise everyone's taxes, it'll be a $2 trillion tax increase. Well, if we raise it only on the rich, which the president wants to do, and the Democrats, that's 40% of the nation's income, so it'll be a $900 billion tax increase. It isn't about who the tax increase is on, That's simply envy and class warfare. It's about how much money you're going to take out of the private sector. $900 billion taken from the private sector is an enormous drain and will hurt economic growth. Doesn't matter whether it's rich people, middle class, or poor people. It's money taken out of the productive sector, the private sector, and given to the non-productive sector, the government.
Finally, we started the conversation talking about the pledge. When Senator Graham does, though, indicate that his commitment is softening, do you have words with him later on? Does he get scolded behind the scenes?
I don't do any scolding. It's not my job to tell other senators or congressmen how to vote or what to think. I try to communicate what I think is the message of our party. The message always has been, and I think always should be, that we're the party of limited government and balanced budgets and low taxes, and that we believe that less taxes will stimulate private business. We shouldn't abandon that philosophy.
Senator, I appreciate your time as always. Have a good one.
Thank
Senator
you.
Rand Paul of Kentucky. On a day